Gene Hackman is now merely a name in a case with many unresolved issues. The interior of the bedroom was locked. When police arrived, they discovered an undisturbed residence and an odd emptiness. However, the most significant items had vanished, as though they had never been there. A tale in which every indication that Gene Hackman didn't simply die was removed. Everything he owned and knew was destroyed, and even his last hours were shrouded in mystery. These are opinions derived from my own perspective. I dare not make any claims. But Hackman's story won't finish here if the following theories are correct. Nobody is able to explain this. An interiorly lockable room. There are no indications of forcible entry or evidence of someone purposefully breaking in. There was no key in the home, the lock was undamaged, and the sturdy wooden door was still in place. The Santa Fe County Police were unprepared for such an odd mystery when they arrived at Gene Hackman's estate. Officers had to climb through the window to access the bedroom of an old man in terrible condition who was thought to have lived in seclusion for days. Upon entering through the window, they were immediately struck by the complete silence. There is no sound or indication of life in the room. Everything seemed neat inside, with no indications of conflict or commotion. The covers were still spread out on the bed, and the bedside lamp was still there, but the air seemed heavy, as though the room had been closed off for days. When he recognized something was amiss, one of the first officers to enter the room hesitated for a second. How was it possible to lock this door from the inside? Nobody was able to respond to the question. If Hackman was truly alone, who locked the door? There were no external indications that the door had been purposefully tampered with or forced open. However, oddly, following closer examination, they discovered that the room had no key. There was only one way out of the locked door. Hackman couldn't have gone by any other means if he had actually locked himself in here, because the window through which the police climbed had never been opened. What then transpired? Might someone have removed the key after locking the door from the outside? If so, how might they have done so covertly? Police started looking at every aspect in the room. There were no indications of a struggle or broken furniture. This further complicated matters since, had Hackman truly been in an emergency, he ought to have attempted to flee, or at the very least left some indication that he had, but nothing came of it. His phone was nowhere to be found in the room, not even by unfamiliar cops. Police looked through previous call logs, but Hackman didn't make any calls after February 12th, indicating that he either didn't speak to anyone at that time or, if he did, those calls were erased. A chamber that is locked from the inside frequently conjures up a traditional mystery scene. Nobody came in or went out. So how did things turn out this way? Is it a coincidence or something more sinister? When police inquired about Hackman's habit of locking his bedroom door at night, people who knew him claimed he never did. Hackman's friend revealed that since he disliked being confined and preferred open areas, it was nearly impossible for him to lock himself in the room. Another major question was whether Hackman could have locked the door from the inside and lost the key if he was truly alone in the house. That is unlikely, because if that were the case, the key should still be in the room. But since there were no indications that it was, investigators looked into another possibility. Someone had come into this room and gone without anyone noticing. But if that were the case, how did they leave no trace? Police speculated that someone might have been in the house with Hackman in his last days. But if that's the case, who was that person? And why didn't they get in touch with anyone outside? Even more terrifying is the second theory. It's possible that someone entered the room, locked the door, and then made an escape that the police haven't yet found. But if so, why did they do it? A number of additional questions start to surface as police continue their investigation. Why didn't Hackman get in touch with anyone in the week prior to the incident being discovered? Why were there such odd signs in that house if he actually lived alone? Who could have been the final individual to see him? Police found another odd detail as they searched the house further. Just prior to this time, the home security surveillance system was turned off. Who did it? And more importantly, why? The Santa Fe County Police report's conclusion that there were no indications of outside interference only served to further complicate matters. Why was Hackman's room locked from the inside with no way to open it if there was nobody else in the house, and he was truly alone? A room that is locked and has no plausible reason. A once famous Hollywood figure is now enshrouded in a mystery that no one can fully comprehend, and that's only the beginning. Every trace was removed. Police expected to find emails, personal documents, or other crucial information on Gene Hackman's computer that would help explain the bizarre sequence of events leading up to his death. But instead, they found the opposite. The primary hard drive of the computer had disappeared, leaving no evidence of erased, encrypted, or destroyed data. It had vanished entirely. No indications of unauthorized data access or remote hacking. Only someone who was on the scene, knew exactly what to take, and executed it flawlessly could accomplish this. However, who and, more crucially, why? The deliberate nature of this data loss was what puzzled investigators the most. This was not your average theft, where the thief took everything that was valuable. Other than the hard drive, USB drives, and a few private pictures, Hackman's home was complete. Cash, jewelry, and high-value items that a normal thief would target were all undamaged, and no safes were forced open. It appeared to be just data that was taken. Every drawer in Hackman's study was turned upside down, and every nook and cranny was examined. But everything was too neat, clean, and flawless, as if it had never been there in the first place. What did Hackman save on those devices, and who requested that information be deleted, is the question then. The disappearance of a few personal photos was among the most peculiar details. Hackman didn't have a habit of keeping pictures on digital devices, according to his family. Although he favored printed pictures, there were no longer any significant pictures on the computer or a separate USB drive. What might those pictures be? Was Hackman preserving pictures that someone wished to conceal, or did he catch something he shouldn't have seen? Additionally, police discovered another concerning detail. A close acquaintance of Hackman claims that he kept numerous confidential data on these devices, such as emails, letters, and perhaps notes pertaining to significant figures in the movie business. Hackman once kept an electronic journal on his computer, recording meetings, romances, and even startling Hollywood secrets, according to an unidentified source. If this is accurate, then who requested that material be removed? The time of the hard drive's disappearance is among the case's most puzzling facts. When police examined the home's security system, they discovered that the surveillance system had been shut off right before they got there. This indicates that someone purposefully deleted the evidence before the formal investigation started. But how could they do that when Hackman hadn't spoken to anyone in his last days? A theory was proposed. It's possible that someone entered his home before the cops showed up, took what they wanted, and then vanished. However, how did they do it if they did? The entrance door remained secured. No indications of an intruder. During that period, no witnesses reported seeing anyone enter or exit the house. Did someone break in covertly, or could Hackman have provided these documents to someone before this occurred? An ideal loss of evidence. In the final weeks of Hackman's life, Santa Fe County Police searched for any indications of his online activity. But they found nothing. No recent messages or emails, absence of data backups, nothing at all. It's too odd for someone like Hackman, a Hollywood icon who is wise and cautious. The police realized they were looking into more than just a routine case when they discovered that whomever had taken the hard drive knew exactly what they were doing. Not a casual crime, not an amateur, but a well-thought-out move to remove some crucial data. They were up against an unseen ghost that had the ability to completely obliterate all evidence of themselves. Gene Hackman has always been a reclusive individual. He avoided making noise on social media, disliked in-depth interviews about his personal life, and particularly avoided discussing what went on behind the scenes in Hollywood. However, few individuals were aware that Hackman had a tendency of recording crucial talks and storing them on computers or phones where they could be easily accessed by hackers. Rather, he stored tangible recordings in a black suitcase that was maintained in a little outbuilding next to the main house. While investigating the scene, Santa Fe County Police received information concerning this luggage from an unnamed source. However, it was gone when they arrived. There were no indications of a break-in or evidence of anyone entering the outbuilding, but the luggage that was thought to hold startling revelations was gone. Why did a 95-year-old man save recordings for so long? Hackman didn't enjoy gathering material for extortion or disclosing secrets. He wasn't an investigative journalist. What was on those tapes then? In a private talk, Hackman's old acquaintance once admitted that Gene knew too much. He didn't say it out loud, but he understood that Hollywood is more than just a location to make movies worth billions of dollars. It's a vast power structure where the wealthy control everything, including unwritten tales and actor contracts. Hackman may have secret information that someone didn't want to be made public, if he actually possessed recordings of significant talks. However, if those tapes were merely industry rumors, why did they vanish right before the police discovered them? The place where Hackman stored the bag was thoroughly examined by investigators. The suitcase was gone, but there were no odd footprints or indications of forced entry. There are two options. Prior to this, Hackman kept it to himself. It was taken by someone without leaving any evidence. The cops were troubled by both of these theories. If Hackman concealed the luggage, it indicates that he was aware of something beforehand. However, how could someone else have taken it without leaving any evidence? Furthermore, when did they take it? There were more oddities. Besides the suitcase's disappearance, it fell on the same day as two other significant occasions. Hackman's surveillance system was shut off right before the cops showed up, and his computer's hard disk vanished as well. These two incidents occurred in a very brief time frame right before the cops arrived on the scene. This cannot happen by accident. If someone wanted to conceal something, they prepared ahead of time, understood exactly what to do, and behaved very precisely. Who are they then? An ideal disguise. A more terrifying theory exists. It's not a hurried cover-up. This purging is methodical. What caused the hard disk to be removed? USB images and the bag are no longer considered standard personal property. All of them are data, and in certain situations, data is worth more than cash. Someone was fully aware of what Hackman stored, where he kept it, and when to act. The robber might have grabbed more valuable items if this had been a typical theft. Jewelry, money, and even artwork in his home vanished, but only items that might have contained information did. This indicates that someone had been keeping an eye on Hackman for a while and knew exactly what they were searching for, since they expertly removed any traces. What location might the suitcase be? The luggage wasn't left in the house, it wasn't hidden in the car, and it wasn't abandoned anywhere close to the house. Santa Fe County Police increased their search in the hopes of finding it someplace close to the scene, but they were unsuccessful. It's possible that the persons who took it took the suitcase with them. The timing adds to the suspicion of everything. Why did that luggage vanish right before the police began their investigation, if Hackman had stored it for so long without any issues? A terrifying possibility appears. Someone was aware that the police would examine the bag beforehand. If so, this isn't a typical situation. This is a purposeful activity that is executed with near-perfect accuracy. It's possible that Hackman unintentionally kept a secret too huge, and someone determined it should never be shared. The question that remains unsolved: police are now looking at more than simply ordinary losses. They must deal with a sequence of intentional events led by a mastermind who has a well-thought-out strategy, understands exactly what to destroy, and has behaved so flawlessly that they have left no trace. What then might have been in the suitcase? A significant Hollywood scandal and an undiscovered plot. A tale that the world has never heard. The solution is most likely still in a suitcase that has vanished without a trace. Santa Fe County. Officers thought everything was rather straightforward when they started piecing together the events that transpired in Gene Hackman and Betsy Arawaka's home. Hackman died a week after Betsy on February 11th. A plausible theory supported by the scene and preliminary data. However, they then discovered an unexplainable. On February 12th, one day after it was thought she had died, Betsy Arakawa made multiple calls to a clinic, according to cell phone data call logs and information from the healthcare provider. Who made the calls on February 12th if she actually died on February 11th? Hackman was initially found to be alone in the residence after February 11th, according to the scene examination report. But the call data rocked everything, so police obtained information from the network provider. On the morning of February 12th, just minutes before the clinic opened, a call came in from Betsy's phone. 3 minutes and 17 seconds passed throughout the call. Although the call's content was not recorded, clinic employees verified that the caller was an older woman who needed to be treated right away because she felt ill. Betsy was still alive that day if this was indeed her. If not, who made the call on her phone? There was again another irregularity in the telecom data. On the morning of February 12th, Betsy's phone was operating regularly. However, in the afternoon of the same day, it was turned off using the standard method, which involved either removing the battery or hitting the power button. Not because of a dead battery or a dropped signal, it was purposefully turned off, which made everything even odd. Why was Betsy's phone still in use on February 12th if she had died on February 11th as first reported? After that call, what actually transpired if she was still alive on February 12th? And what was the reason if someone else used her phone? Another concern was whether Hackman was actually by himself at the time, or if there was another person in the house that the police hadn't discovered. Police found an anomaly based on information from examining Hackman's home's electrical system and technological equipment. At roughly 2 a.m. on February 13th, when Hackman should have been sleeping, there were indications of devices being utilized. For 15 minutes, a light in the living room was switched on. The study's internet connection device was restarted. Hackman's phone opened a banking app, but no purchase was completed. Hackman, who did these things? Either someone who was inside the residence or someone who departed before the police showed up. Police questioned everything after learning another detail. Around 9 a.m. on February 12th, the clinic attempted to call Betsy, but nobody picked up. This indicates that the caller didn't return the call. Why didn't Betsy answer the clinic's call if she was the one who placed it? Why didn't they keep calling to set up an appointment if someone else called in her place? Why was a call placed on February 12th if Betsy had actually died on February 11th? These questions have no logical responses. Because of the date discrepancy, detectives began to think that the original report of Hackman and Betsy's deaths may have been faulty. From the beginning, the timetable that the police had initially believed was no longer accurate. A more terrifying theory started to surface. What if the timeline was purposefully changed? What if the events that we believe took place in a particular order turned out to be different? Was the sequence of events altered by anyone? If so, why? What were they trying to conceal? Most significantly, how did they deceive the person they intended to deceive? The police's original theory was completely disproved by the fresh investigative facts. Everything they believed to be true was totally contradicted. Was Betsy Arakawa alive until at least February 12th? Or did she actually die on February 11th? What would have occurred if she had phoned the clinic on the morning of February 12th? Was there anyone else at Hackman's home at the time that the police hadn't discovered? And if so, why was her phone off that day? One thing emerged from the timeline's numerous inconsistencies. The truth has never been exposed, and if someone purposefully altered the tale, they did so for a very particular reason that the police have not yet discovered. Every investigation must have a conclusion, but occasionally that conclusion does not equate to answers. Police dropped the case after finding no evidence of criminal activity, including anyone breaking into Hackman's home, no traces of a struggle, and no valuable stuff taken. However, the most crucial items mysteriously vanished without a trace. Personal documents are stored on the USB hard drive, and more significantly, the enigmatic suitcase that holds recordings of conversations with influential Hollywood people. Nobody is able to explain their disappearance. No security cameras to monitor. No eyewitness noticed anything out of the ordinary. Everything had been meticulously cleaned, which is why this case is so eerily perplexing. When police received a report, they went into Hackman's home. Except for a few items that shouldn't have vanished on their own, they discovered everything undamaged. Hackman's computer was still on the desk, but the hard disk was missing. The hard drive was entirely removed, even though someone could have destroyed it immediately or remotely if they had wished to remove the data. Numerous personal documents were discovered by the police. However, those that were thought to be significant to Hackman were not. His USB drive vanished as well, but other electronics were still there. The bag with the recordings was the most peculiar item. Hackman kept it outside rather than in the main house, but it was gone when the police arrived to inspect. The doctor was in good condition. No indications of an intrusion. All of these items were taken by someone without leaving any evidence. Police looked everywhere but were unable to locate them. There is no proof of theft, but what was taken might provide insight. If someone was trying to conceal something, they did a great job. Before the cops arrived, everything that might have been proof vanished. This brings up a crucial query. Why did those recordings vanish at this time if Hackman had stored them for so long without anyone touching them? Why would someone want to remove those documents if they weren't important? If this was a spontaneous incident, why did everything vanish so completely, leaving no trace? Information was the only thing taken. No cash or valuables were taken. No jewelry, watches, or paintings were taken. But the USB hard disk included. Private data. People become concerned since the mystery luggage is gone. Police said there were no indications of criminal activity following a thorough investigation. Although there is no proof of foul play, this does not imply that nothing occurred. Who grabbed this proof if no one broke in? Why did all of Hackman's crucial data vanish if there were no indications of a struggle? If there was no crime, why was everything pertaining to Hackman's personal life erased? There are no solutions. And for that reason, this case is mysterious. The police departed the area. Even though the case file was closed, there are still a ton of unanswered questions for people who want to know the truth. Was Hackman concealing anything that someone didn't want to know? Did those recordings have a backstory? A scandal? A sinister secret? Or an event that might rock Hollywood? Or was everything merely a coincidence? Nobody knows, and maybe nobody ever will. The proof is no longer there. The justifications have been removed. The tale is no longer being told by the only people who knew the truth. There is only one unresolved question left. What transpired cannot be explained by any investigation. There are no traces left to follow, and no testimony can provide insight. Police came to a straightforward conclusion in their investigation. No indications of criminal activity. However, with so many pieces that don't fit, how can such an answer be accepted? A bedroom that is locked from the inside and nobody knows why. A hard drive vanished as though it had never been there. All of the personal documents, USB devices, and photos abruptly disappeared. Additionally, the suitcase that held the recordings, that may alter the entire narrative, vanished into thin air. Before the police could reach them, everything that would have revealed the truth about what had transpired in Gene Hackman's home vanished. There is nothing to explore or follow, just a terrifying emptiness and a dreadful quiet. This must be the most perfect coincidence in history if it was a coincidence. But if someone planned it and covertly removed all evidence, who are they? And more importantly, what are they concealing? The most important query is still Arakawa Betsy's phone. She called the clinic multiple times on February 12th, according to investigative data, but based on the police's initial theory, she left on February 11th. Who answered the phone and placed those calls, if so? Is there a truth that remains hidden, or does this imply that all of the police's time speculations were incorrect? What about Gene Hackman? Was it true that he spent a week alone in the residence and that no one called him? Was he not as isolated as everyone believed, or did no one come seeking for him? No responses. Nobody is aware. The only things left are gaps, unanswerable questions. A case that appears straightforward at first glance, but becomes increasingly disturbing as you look deeper. A tale that will most likely be lost to time forever. The final hints have been removed, and the most significant facts have most likely been withheld by someone who will never be known. Is it a legend's destiny, to vanish into the obscurity of an unresolved mystery? Or has some power made it impossible to tell this story in its entirety? Nobody is aware, and maybe nobody ever will be.